Real Water, and I always forget this guy's name, Andre Marcino, you get that right? For their sponsorship, Veterans in Politics, and the judges' interviews today. This takes a lot, and I want to tell the panelists, thank you for sacrificing your Saturday afternoon to be here. And all of you that are candidates that are here and have gone through this process, and you two up here, it's tough. I've been there, and I'll be there again. And you know, you have to have a willingness to serve this community, and I think that's what it's all about. So again, thank you to the panelists for serving in your capacity, and as Veterans in Politics, appreciate it. Tom's right, I'd rather be here than City Council. All right, let's get this started. Ladies, I will roll out a couple of rules for you. By this time of the day, for me, what rules? Right, panelists? No. You will each have a minute and a half to introduce yourselves. The panel members will have maybe 30 or so seconds to ask you a question. You are allowed 1 minute to answer. Sometimes they'll ask you both a question where I'll let you either have 30 seconds or a minute to answer based on time and where we are in the program. This is not a forum to air personal grievances. Panel members will keep their questions pretty generic. I haven't seen that yet, by the way. I don't know why it's on the paper. Candidates do not...
Were you here when Ken Wagner was on the panel?
Yeah, I was here when Ken Wagner was on the panel.
That's why that's there.
Okay. Nancy, candidates...
You?
No, you guys didn't. Candidates are not supposed to mention each other's names in your responses, and of course, panelists, any sitting judges, no questions about pending cases will be tolerated. And with that, Ms. Perry, please introduce yourself. You have a minute and a half.
Thank you, and thank you, Veterans in Politics, for inviting me to do this endorsement interview. I was lucky enough to be born in the hills of Arkansas, and I was raised up until 10 years old without indoor plumbing. I know what it's like to have to hunt, to have the meat on my table. I know what it's like to have to grow a garden so that I can have vegetables to feed my family. I moved to Texas when I was 14 years old and enjoyed Galveston, Texas, went into culture shock, so I went back to Arkansas until I went into culture shock there too. So once I graduated, I bummed around for a couple of years, and then I joined the Air Force when I was 21 years old. Spent 8.5 years in the Air Force and loved every minute of it. When I was medically discharged in 1993, I wound up being stationed here with my ex-husband, and there was a college, so I went and got my undergraduate degree at UNLV, and bummed around a little bit more, did fast food jobs, and still could barely make it out of the $12, $13 range. So when they opened up the law school, I graduated from the William S. Boyd School of Law after 3 years. I've practiced in personal injury, I did a little bit of bankruptcy, I've done a little bit of criminal law, but when I went to work for Marshall Willick, I found my passion in family law. I've loved it. 90% of my caseload is in family law. I've served my country, and I want to continue serving my community by being the next judge in Department of Health. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And Ms. Elliot.
Good afternoon. I'm a lawyer since 1986 in the state of Nevada. I'm also a licensed marriage and family therapist. When Department L became open in 2002, I ran with nine of us. It was like a horse race. A lot of those people are judges today. I won that race, and I've kept every promise that I made. I ran on a ticket of court improvement because of my background in behavioral science as well as a lawyer. I wanted to go to the family court and work on bringing alternative dispute resolution programs to the court that would help families get through the system for less money and quicker and get back to living, you know, and not be living their life through the court system in an adversarial manner. I also, in 2008, ran again and was then involved in all the specialty courts, which are therapeutic problem-solving courts. I spent 2 years on the adult criminal drug court and also a year and a half in the truancy court. We brought our recidivism rate for theft crimes, that's really what drug problems are relative to their theft crimes related to drug seeking. We brought recidivism down to 13 to 18%, which is outstanding, and it was a court of almost 600. So I had that for a couple years, and then with truancy, anything over 50% improvement, we were at 69%, and the principles were applied just as they were in the criminal court. I don't have enough time to explain that right now.
Thank you. And just to give you both a heads up, as the panel's been doing with me all day, I will cut you off. It's no form of disrespect.
That's all right.
He'll enjoy it.
I'm used to that.
It's no form of disrespect. It is to just stay on time and stay on track. So please be mindful of that. Thank you very much for your introductions. Our first question will come from Ms. Manharis on the end over there, and we'll just go right across the tables.
Yes, this is for the incumbent, Judge Elliot. Have you had an attorney point out an error that you made procedurally or in regards to applying the law? And if so, did you correct your error? Or if not, would you correct your error or dig in your heels and make excuses to save face?
1 minute, please.
That's happened to me in the past, early in my career. This is my 12th year as a judge. And there's a law under the Nevada Rule of Appellate Procedure that if you realize when someone's appealed something that you could do something differently before the docket has been transmitted to the Supreme Court, you have the right to change your decision. And I've had to do that in the past. And sometimes I honestly don't know, and I ask the lawyers to brief things, because if they bring me the best information on both sides, I'm going to have the best ability with that information in making the most just decision. I have no problem ever saying that I'm wrong about something. I'm there to do the right thing, so if it's a roundabout way that we get there. But bottom line, I've only been reversed 3 times. None of them are published. They're all minor things like 3-day notice to take a default didn't happen with a lawyer. I've been affirmed once on a case called Grisham versus Grisham, which helps us bring litigation to an end, which is one of the reasons I ran for ADR.
Thank you. Our next question will be from Ms. Fee.
Questions to Judge Elliot. Listening to your background, I'm just curious how often you implement social trainings or classes or things that families that are in your court have to attend, and what cost is associated with that? And is it the family's burden?
Again, 1 minute, please.
In the domestic court, we don't have the luxury of wraparound services like they do in dependency court with abuse and neglect. So yes, anything that we outsource does have a cost, other than a couple programs that I started. The UNLV Property Debt Mediation Program is free. And we also have cooperative parenting after divorce, which is either through therapists in their counseling setting or also through UNLV at $299 a person, and I started those programs as well. So sometimes there's a cost, and yes, I do use those.
Okay, thank you very much. Dr. Hawkins.
My question is for Ms. Perry. Historically, in this town, we've been very slow to unseat sitting judges unless there was a reason. Typically, in that case, the bar lines up behind a candidate, and when that doesn't happen, typically the sitting judge is reelected. Do you see this as a case where you are dealing with a problem in the Department L, or do you see this as you're the better candidate of the two?
1 minute, please.
I see it as both. There is a problem with the department. Right now, cases are slow at getting before the sitting judge. Decisions are not necessarily being made in a timely manner. Families are being left out in the cold. Senior judges are not being used when they should be used, so that at least litigants are not being left behind. I also have the experience. I have life experience in which I can bring to the bench. I also have the experiences of actually litigating the cases and not just being a judge or bringing the behavioral sciences into it. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Mr. Jonas.
So, a follow-up with that. So, Ms. Perry, you said that there was an issue with cases not getting heard timely enough?
Yes, there is an issue. I've had a couple of instances where when I went to file a motion, and it's been 5 months since it was there. I had no choice but to preempt the judge so that my litigants and the people that I represent could be heard in a timely manner.
So in the interest of time, not trying to interrupt, but so what specifically could you do differently than your opponent? Obviously, it seems like you're blaming her for this. So what specifically would you, elected, how would you fix that problem?
I would show up.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Jonas. Dr. Dupre.
Yes, this is a question for both. About 3.8% of divorces end up being high conflict divorces, most often hiding domestic violence. What are the red flags you look for, And what do you do to ensure children's safety? Or what would you do?
Ms. Elliott, if you take that first, you have 1 minute.
Do you mean with reference to the domestic violence risk?
The risk and the hidden domestic violence.
I have a lot of education in the batterer cycle, and you know, it's not just physical, it can be verbal, and that hurts children over time, or living in a house where there are a lot of raging, other kinds of dysfunctional things, threats relative to economic things. So it's not just physical danger. And yes, we're trained and we have to continue to take CLEs relative to that so that we can look and see, does this seem like through the pleadings, because that's all we can do is look at what comes before us in a court of law, unless we outsource it for an investigation, we can get some better information. But of course, you know, it's expensive. So unless the money's there, generally we have to do that through trial process and through motion practice. But bottom line, we use a lot of supervised visitation, you know, give them help, whether it's in anger management or in a group. If there's domestic violence that has been proven, especially through a criminal conviction, then generally they go through a program that's up to 52 weeks where they're working in a group so that the other members of the group can confront each other on behaviors that are unhealthy for the family.
Thank you. Ms. Perry, same question.
The domestic violence is a big problem in families, and there's a lot of people that don't even report the domestic violence that takes place. There are instances where men are just as big of a victim in domestic violence as what the women is, and the court needs to start recognizing that it is a problem. And I am not speaking on the current judge right now. She does a wonderful job in that area. But the community needs to recognize that there are domestic violence for both men and women. Proper training needs to take place, and you do have to look at the pleadings and see what the pleadings say, and hopefully that the triggers are there that would call to attention that there needs to be more care taken. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let me set my clock here. Judge Luke, your question, please.
Yes. I'm going to deviate from my earlier question that I've been asking all day. It's very simply this. Within the past few years, there's been an explosion of social science research on various things like parental alienation, custody patterns, you know, parenting styles, attachment and bonding theory and the like, and personality, role of personality disorders and mental health. And yet you go down to court, you might as well be looking at judges and lawyers who are kind of like deer in the headlights. They have no clue what they're talking about or what they know. How would you change that for the betterment of the court and the legal profession?
And Judge, that's a pretty complicated question. I'm going to give the candidates 1.5 minutes to answer or respond. Ms. Elliott, would you go first?
Well, what I have been doing since I've been there, because of my background, is sharing my knowledge and doing that mostly through programs. I have brought different people to speak to us, and the judges have gone to different programs where they could learn information about developmental issues of children, recognizing when you have personality disorders, things that happen that are there's little insight into the person's, they don't have the ability to change. So there's not going to be a lot of social service that you can do for certain people. Those are the high conflict personality disorder people. So we try to put things in place like parenting coordinators, other ways to keep them from dragging the other person into court repeatedly. I don't think people should have to have the background that I have to be a judge, even in family court. I think it's helpful. It helps you walk 360 degrees around the problem and not look at it just through the rules and just through the legal system. However, you know, with the CLEs that we have to do, continuing legal education, we are offered a great deal of, through the Judicial College, of information relative to families, and judges in family court have to take a lot more education than in the civil district court so that they are aware of the behavioral sciences and the systemic issues in families and behavioral change in families and what does it take.
Perfect. 5 seconds to spare. Ms. Perry, same question.
I've been lucky enough in my undergraduate, even though I majored in business management, I took a lot of psychology courses, and I was always amazed with the personality disorders and the personality developments of people. I've had cases where there has been severe personality disorders involved. I firmly believe that if a person has a problem, if there's a possibility of harm to the children, you've got to protect the children first. You cannot give the children back to a parent who's going to be using those children as a means to harm the other parent just because their disorders is messing with it. Besides that, you do have, you know, you can order them to do therapy, or they're going to be on supervised visits until they get their children, you know, before they can see their children in a normal setting again. There's a lot of tools that can be used that will help, hopefully help make that parent a better parent, because there's some good parents out there that just have some mental health issues, and we need to find the right tools to help them. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Judge, did you want to disclose what you've disclosed to other candidates?
Yeah, no, I'm not going to be voting on the endorsement, and I won't participate in the panel discussions on the choices for endorsement. So I thought perhaps they've already heard this.
They may have. I'm just trying to be consistent.
Sure, appreciate it. Thank you.
As you'd like me to be consistent as you want, which I really haven't been. Anyway, that being said, thank you, ladies. Mr. Lamb, your next question, please.
Ladies, please bear with me while I word this question. I'm trying to be very, very judicial in the way I word it.
That's not easy.
Recently, the Attorney General of the United States, in a speech, intimated or loosely advised states' attorneys general that they could either loosely interpret or enforce or disregard laws that they did not agree with. I'd like both of your opinions on that statement. And I know that it's been reported in different ways through different news media, but that was my general interpretation of what he said. I'd like your interpretation.
Ms. Perry, would you go first, please? And you have a minute to win it.
Okay. I believe it is not my position to legislate from the bench. The law is there for a reason, and until the Supreme Court or the U.S. Supreme Court overturns that, it is going to be my job to enforce that. If it leaves me some discretion, then I will do the best job that I can to make sure that the families and the children are taken care of. But I will not litigate from the bench.
Okay, very good. Ms. Elliott, same question.
I agree that we're in a different position in the third branch of government and the separation of powers. We're not there to create laws, sometimes in interpreting laws against the facts that are before us. We might branch out, kind of like a tree branches out into smaller veins, carving out some new ramifications for particular facts. I am, in a way, kind of an activist judge in some other ways with regard to the behavioral sciences program, but not trying to make comments about what's happening in the legislature unless we come in on a bill. Basically, when it's a legislative year, we'll sit down and say, are we neutral? We try to be neutral on most everything because we're there to listen to the facts of each case and take what comes before us in the court of law, properly pled, and not get on the side of this is how the law should read and this is how I believe they're doing it wrong today. That's not our job. Our job is as a neutral and not as an activist.
Thank you very much. Good timing. Mr. Melendez, your question, please.
I'm going to go back to a question I had earlier today to some of the candidates, and it has to do with spousal support specifically. I think I understand the mandates that the judges are under when it comes to child support, but I'm looking at spousal support specifically and whether or not disability benefits should be considered as part of that calculation when spousal support is being awarded.
Ms. Elliott, you have a minute.
Are you talking about the concern with military disability where...
Precisely.
Okay. Our current state law probably conflicts a little bit with our federal law because you are getting those benefits due to your service and perhaps injuries, whether they're physical all the way to mental health problems. The state law currently allows judges to look at any income that either party brings to the table, and I understand from a vet's point of view, that should be their own income. But until our laws are changed, I've only had to apply that one time, and I did have to take some funds from a man. It's called the Shelton case. It wasn't me who had the case, but when I became a new judge in 2003, I inherited that case from Judge Gaston, and bottom line, they ruled in that matter that we are allowed to look to that, but I think if there's not a need, the bottom line is you have to go from need and ability to pay, and there's a statutory set of considerations that come from case law. And no one, I think, on that bench is sitting there trying to take away funds from somebody who has a disability. You try to work it out so that the other side gets up and gets a job. Bottom line, we have rehab spousal plans, and you try to make it so that everybody understands, you know, if you've been the mom all the time, or you've been the stay-at-home dad all the time, you're now going to be sharing roles.
Thank you, Ms. Elliott. I gave you a minute 15 because your answer seemed extremely important to the panel. I can do the same for you, Ms. Perry, if you'd like to respond.
Yes, I'd like to respond. The military disability pay is given to that person because they've given part of their life to serve the country. They've possibly lost a limb, they're unable to be employed due to whatever their disability is. I also recognize that some of the disabilities does not stop that person from being able to be employed. I am one of those who have a 40% disability, but I can still work for a living. I think a lot of it depends on that. If this person's main source of income is going to be their disability pay and they cannot afford to pay that spousal support, then what is the spouse doing to support themselves? If they've not made any attempt to try to do it and they think they need to be continued to be supported, then I may have a problem with that and we may have a discussion. But both people need to be able to support themselves no matter where their funds come from, but I'm going to attempt to look elsewhere before the military disability.
Okay, very good answer. Very good questions, by the way, from the panel. Mr. Blanchard will be our last question asker. That sound right? Asker?
Interrogate.
Interrogate.
It's late, you can say anything.
I can say anything I want to, huh?
You didn't say
I know, I'm on my third bottle, by the way. It's not an election year for you. No, it's not really. The floor is yours.
Hi, thank you, ladies. I want to thank you first for coming and running. I know it's not a fun thing to run a campaign, and for you that don't know what you're getting into, you know, and for you, Judge, who does know what you're getting into, still to do it, says something. But please give me a quality that you attain, or that you have, that sets you apart from your opponent, that would make you the best candidate for the seat.
And ladies, before you begin, you will have a minute and a half. This is the home run for you both to knock it out of the ball. How to do that?
Excellent.
Ms. Barrett.
Okay, the best quality I have is probably just who I am. I am a very happy person. I am very open. I believe in letting people be who they are. I have the life experience where I can take the poorest of the poor and know exactly what they're suffering through. And, well, I can't go the richest of the rich because I've never had that opportunity, but I can imagine that one. So I can bring my actual life experience to be able to understand what they're coming from. I'm going to have the compassion that's needed, but also the desire to kick them in the butt when they need that extra deal, because I drug myself out of the trenches and out of the ghetto pretty much, because, well, being from Arkansas, what do you expect? But I know what it's like, and I know it can be done. You just have to get out there and go do it.
Very good. Thank you very much. And Ms. Elliott.
I bring the background of the marriage and family therapy, as well as the bottom line, I'm a great case manager. What I've heard stated here today is inaccurate, and I've brought Supreme Court reports to prove that I have not missed any days except for 3 since July 2011. And I am one of the best case managers in the family court. I have cases in the number of 390s. There are some judges with cases open in 640. So there's never been 5 months to get into my court. The longest that it is about 45 to 60 days, and we sign orders shortening time like they're running through a sieve if there's any basis for emergency, from anything from being denied seeing your kids to some kind of need for, times of the essence on financial issues. You need an injunction so someone doesn't steal all the community funds. But I believe that my main quality that I would like to highlight, and why I want to continue to work on the bench, is that I have such a long history of successful programs. I can hold a vision and work with 40, 50, 60 people with 50 agenda items and help people slowly come around to the process of change, because they tend to fall out of the tree when you mention change, and especially in the court system. I have a long list of programs. It'll be on my website, and I'll leave it here along with my judicial Supreme Court record showing that I've only missed 3 days in court.
Thank you, Ms. Elliott. Thank you
Thank you.
very much. And to both of you, thank you for your willingness to serve, and to you, Judge Elliott, for your service. I want to again recognize Judge Luke and his service to this community, and Judge George Assad over here in the back, your service to this community. It is difficult. We all recognize that, so I commend you both. This is a long path.
Let's not forget Mr. Steve Ross's service to us.
Oh, you're all.
Oh, you're gonna make me blush. Thanks, God, I appreciate that. Give our candidates a round of applause. Again, I also want to recognize George Shahid behind the camera here today, and give him a round of applause. And Scott Gormley, the owner of Rhythm Kitchen, for sponsoring us here today, and one of our sponsors, and Real Water also for sponsoring us again. So, ladies, thank you very much. And
thanks, Steve, for being a hell of a moderator.
I hear there's an ongoing party. Where's that happening? That was in the email.
Downstairs.
Is there a party downstairs?